Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Patten, and in this video, I'm going to cover the tight end position as well as defense special teams for Week 2 of the NFL. There are several factors that I consider when building my lineups and selecting tight ends. I look at game total, target total, matchups, and the game script. A common mistake when building DFS lineups is to simply punt at the tight end position or defense's special team position, and and I've been guilty of this myself. And players do that so that they can free up salary to spend up in on other positions. But I thought about this, and what I found, not only was it's not really been a successful strategy for me, but what I found is if I'm spending up to, say, get to a wide receiver that's projected to score 20 points, and the tight end I have to spend down and say spend $2,700, and he's only projected to get 2 or 3 points, and let's just say he gets a zero for one reason or another. Um, in essence, what I've done is so let's say I got the 20 points out of my receiver, or let's say he even goes off and gets 30 points. Well, the zero that I just got from the tight end for punting that position now means I actually only got 15 points for that receiver. That's how I kind of look at it myself. Um, Week in and week out, there is value at the tight end position. You are going to find four in particular tight ends at the top every week. They are going to be the most expensive. Kelsey from Kansas City, Ertz from Philadelphia, Kittle from San Francisco, and Ingram from the Giants. But I'm going to show you here in a second. If you look at last week, you can clearly see that you can, if you do the right research and break it down, you can find the tight ends that you don't have to spend up to get there. Now, it's not saying that those tight ends aren't going to go off, several times this year, but there is value that you can find. For instance, last week the top five projected tight ends were Ertz was number one. He was projected to get 17.78 points. Kelsey was projected to get 17.34 points. Kittle 16.47 points. Ingram 14.16 points, and Howard 13.87 points. Ingram did the best. He did finish number one. What's ironic about that, out of those top five, Ingram was the cheapest. He was at 4,800, and Kelsey was the most expensive at 7,100. When you look at it, though, the top five actual scoring tight ends were, as I mentioned, Ingram came in at 31.60 points. His salary was $4,800, and he was projected to be number four. After that, it gets really interesting. Hockenstein from Detroit, the rookie, scored 28.10 points. His salary was $3,100, and he was projected as the number 21 scoring tight end last week. Baltimore's Andrew scored 27.80 points. His salary was $3,000, and he was projected to be number 18. Walker from Tennessee was projected was actually scored 22.50 points and had a salary of $3,500. He was projected to be number 9. And Atlanta's Hooper scored 16.70 points, and his salary was $3,200. This clearly shows that you don't have to go to the top when finding your tight end. There's a lot of value. The average projected position of the top five tight ends was 13. So they were out of the average of the top five last week. Going into the main slate was they were averaging like right around number 13 compared to and their salary, the five of them together, their salaries averaged $3,520. The top five tight ends last week, their average salary was just short of 6,000 at 59.50. So that's almost a $2,500 savings right there in tight end. The question is, how do we locate these values? And that's what we're going to do now. Let's take a look at week 2. If you if you've seen my other videos, you see that the starting point for me is, as I mentioned, I like to look at the Las Vegas lines, and I highlight the teams that are going to be involved in the higher scoring games, because my thought is that if these games are going to be higher scoring, then you're going to have that. Those are the games that are going to have the players necessary to get that scoring. If you look at the slate this week, right off the bat, New Orleans at the Rams, 52 and a half points. Kansas City at Oakland, 52 points. Right off the bat, the number one tight end is right there, Kelsey. He stands out. And Kelsey's actually more expensive, than he was last week. He's up. Last week he was $7,100. This week he's $7,300. But what's interesting in this game is there's another tight end, and for Oakland, his name's Waller, and Waller is actually $3,300. Now, if you look at it this way, Kansas City is 8.5 point favorite, and with that high, second highest total on the board, they're projected to score a lot of points. Kansas City does give up points, especially to the tight end position. And so if you consider Kelsey's at 7,300 and you have Waller at 3,300, there's $4,000 difference there. And if the game script is that the Chiefs are going to be going up and down the field, scoring at will, the Raiders are going to have to do something to try to keep up, which means they're going to have to put the ball in the air. And Carr's top targets in week one were Williams and this rookie tight end Darren Waller. Now, I one thing about this week, and I'll talk more about this in the strategy show that I'm going to do next. I do like to use the running back in the flex, but this is one week in particular where I'm really considering using both the tight ends, Kelsey and then Waller in the flex, or vice versa, because I don't really like a lot of the wide receivers this week, and I kind of see Kelsey as the de facto wide receiver for me. He last week or last year in the game at Oakland, I believe the score was the total points scored in that game were 73, and Kelsey scored 42 fantasy points in that game. So he's had some really good games against Oakland. And then if you look at the flip side of that, the tight end for Oakland last year in that game was Cook, and he had a really good game as well. So both tight ends went off, and I'm not really sure if I'm going to do it, but this is one situation where I would actually consider using both tight ends from that game. Another tight end that I'd like to look at this week, and he's one of the obvious ones, he's at the top, is Kittle from San Francisco. He has a very favorable matchup. He is the focus of the San Francisco offense. Cincinnati, the game total is mediocre at 45. Cincinnati's a 1 point favorite. But if they get involved in a game with some scoring, which is the game script that I'm considering, the passing game from San Francisco is probably going to go through Kittle. Last year, the Cincinnati Bengals were dead last against the tight ends. They gave up 16.14 points a game. So he is definitely on the radar. No, I don't know if I'll have enough salary to actually get up to him. But if I do, he's definitely one of the top tight ends that I'm going to consider. Another tight end is Delaney Walker from Tennessee. His matchup is favorable. He is coming in at $3,500. Last year, the Colts were ranked 29 out of 32 teams against the tight end. I'm a little concerned about the game script of this, though, because if Tennessee is able to control the game with the running game and lean on Derrick Henry, and their defense shuts down the Colts, then the opportunities for Walker may not be there. And so, in this particular game script, I like Walker, but uh, he's going to be in the player pool, but he's not going to be like one of the top tight ends that I consider. Um, Indianapolis did give up just underneath Cincinnati last year, 16.2 points a game to the tight end. Now, a sneaky option at tight end this week is going to be Geoff Swain from Jacksonville. His salary is only $2,700, and a lot of people this would look like a punt, but last year Jacksonville was ranked, or excuse me, Houston was ranked 28 out of 32 against the tight end. And what's interesting about this game in particular is not only the game script, but the game situation. And what I mean by that is Jacksonville is going to be utilizing a backup uh, quarterback, rookie. This is his first start in the NFL because Foles got hurt last week. I believe his first name is Garden Minshew from Washington State. Um, he was a very accurate quarterback in college, but the NFL game is much different from the college game. And but the thing with Swain, Houston is a significant favorite at home, and if Jacksonville gets behind and they have to put the ball in the air, you could see a situation where Swain is actually the safety valve for Minshew. So he's sneaky, $2,700, and he will definitely be in the player pool this week. I also like from New Orleans, Jared Cook. This game has the potential to be a shootout. It is the highest total on the board at 52.5 points. Last year, the Rams were 24 out of 32 teams, so they were in the top 10 as far as the worst teams against the tight end. They gave up 14.2 points per game to the tight end. And if you believe that this game is going to be a game where they're going to be going up and down the field, you can see a situation where Breeze would utilize Cook as well. Plus, it is, as I mentioned, the rankings from last year, it is a weakness of the Rams defense. Um, his salary is not as cheap as the other ones that I previously mentioned. That's cheaper than Kittle and Kelsey at $4,700. But he's definitely going to be in the player pool. Lastly, I have interest in Vernon Davis or Reed from Washington against Dallas. Last year, Dallas was ranked 20 out of 32 teams and gave up 13.8 points per game against the tight end. The game script, though, could be favorable. Last week, Keenum actually did fairly well against the Philadelphia defense, and he targeted Davis. Davis had 4 receptions for 59 yards and a touchdown. Um, so if Dallas is able to shut down the Washington running game and build some type of lead, you could see a situation where Keenum would be putting the ball in the air and leaning on Davis, and Dallas that's not the strong part of their defense is covering tight ends. So he is Vernon Davis is actually his Jordan Reed is ruled out, so it is going to be Vernon Davis, and he's $3,200 this week. So I am gonna have him in the player pool based on game script, and so that's the tight ends that I'm interested in this week. You can see that you don't have to punt the tight end position to free up salary. You can spin down, but you can find value. Um, the tight ends for the player pool for this week that I'll be mentioning in the strategy show are obviously Kelsey and Kittle at the top. Kelsey at 7,300, Kittle at 6,800. But if I can't get to them, my spin down value options are Walker at 3,300, Swaim at 2,700, Cook at 4,700, Davis at 3,200, and Walker at 3,500. Next, I'm going to take a look at defense special teams. This is another area in fantasy sports that a lot of fantasy players, they scroll down and go down to the least expensive defense, which in this case this week would be the Raiders. Maybe not a really good ideal against the Chiefs. They're $2,000, and that frees up if you would select the Raiders. That would take you from 55 per player to an average of 6,000 a player just by selecting the last defense. I'm not willing to punt that position either, and I try to find value. Now, there are some things, there's a lot of variance from week to week on the defenses. But one thing that I like to consider, it's kind of the opposite of what I do for the players, is I look at the Vegas line, but this time I'm searching for the teams that are going to be involved in games that have the low totals. Same scenario. Vegas isn't in the business of giving out money, so the lower scored, lowest projected totals are probably going to be the games that don't have the highest amount of scoring. But the flip side of that is, if you look at games that have high totals, you may be able to find some value in those games as well, because if a game has a high total and the team is favored by a lot of points, in that scenario, in that game script scenario, you have defenses that are going to be playing against offenses that are in comeback mode. Let's take, for instance, this week, New England's at Miami, 18.5-point favorite. The over/under on that game is 48 points, and New England actually has an implied game or team total of 33 points. If you break that game down and look at it, if New England gets out to a big lead, you can definitely see the game script scenario that Fitzpatrick's going to be putting the ball in the air a lot. And New England last week actually did fairly well against the Pittsburgh offense and pretty much shut down Schuster. So for me, another thing that I look at when I'm considering these games is, if they're going to be in comeback mode, there are a lot of negative things that can happen when you put the ball in the air. Considered in comparison to if you can run the ball. Now, naturally, you can fumble, but with a pass, you set up yourself for a sack, interception for a touchdown. These are all scoring plays, and so I factor those in. And if I take a look back at last week, the top scoring defenses, special teams, were San Francisco. They scored 27 points. Tennessee scored 23 points. The Jets scored 18 points. Minnesota scored 16 points. And Baltimore scored 13 points. Their salaries were, the highest of that was Baltimore with $3,800, and they were actually fifth out of the top five. San Fran come in at $2,200. So you can definitely find value, but I just wouldn't just scroll down and punt. I'm going to consider the game script, and in those particular games, all those teams were favorites except one, and all those teams actually won their game, except for the Jets, and they lost by one. So the top projected defenses this week are the Patriots, Bears, Ravens, Texans, and Bills. All of them are favorites. Um, all of their salaries are above 3,000, except for the Texans, which is 28. Uh, they're coming in at $2,800. Now, another thing that you look at on defenses, which could be a big factor in winning or taking down a DFS contest, is the projected ownership. If everybody's taking one certain defense, I might look to take a defense that's lower owned, not punt the position, but maybe like Miami's or New England against Miami is going to be really popular this week. Um, and actually, the Patriots have an ownership value of 5.8%. The Bears have a 9% ownership, so you probably find some value in with the Patriots. And so another favorite that I also like to use is home favorites and identifying those teams as well. This week, I am going to target the following defenses. Baltimore, $3,800. The reason I like Baltimore, they're a home favorite. They're playing against a rookie quarterback. Um, and if they build a lead, even though they're probably build the lead on the ground and shorten the game a little bit, that would make Arizona and their fast break offense with their new coach um, more susceptible to turnovers. So they're at the top of my list, and they're actually probably the most expensive. Let me see here. I think they are the most expensive. No, the Bears are actually the most expensive at 3,900. The Ravens are 3,800. New England's at 3,700. I like New England's defense this week, based on what I just previously said. If they go in there and they do what Las Vegas thinks that they're going to do, they're going to have a lead, and Miami's not going to have any but one choice, and that's to put the ball in the air. And a lot of things can happen when you're in comeback mode. I also like the Dallas defense. They're $3,300. I like Dallas for the same reason that I mentioned New England. They're not as big of a favorite, but Keenum putting the ball in the air. Dallas does have a very good secondary, and Reed's out, but that's not. Vernon Davis did a pretty good job of filling in last week, so um, I do like the Dallas Cowboys defense this week. And Houston, um, they are a home favorite. They're $2,800. Um, Mediocre ownership. And if you look at these four that I've identified, another thing you can factor in is what is their value. If they're projected to score um, so many points, and you break that down by their salary, this week New England would be the top value defense. Um, Based on their projections and the salary from the sources that I use to come up to a 3.3 value, which is the highest for defenses. The Bears, as I mentioned, are the highest salary defense this week, and also have the most ownership at 9%. And as I said, in case you didn't see my last video, if you go here to on any position, but defenses in particular, go over to OPRK, which is the opponent's rank. You can see you can go back and forth with the rankings of those offenses. Looks like the Broncos are they're $2,700, and they're actually at home, and the Bears' offense is actually the worst ranked in the early slate. That's pretty interesting. Um, so I'm going to sum this up for now, and I'm going to be back later on, and I'm going to take the players that we have put into the player pool and develop a couple lineups, show you the pool that we have and how we can plug these into different lineups and come up with some strategy. Don't see any weather concerns tomorrow. Few injuries, not like a running back. Uh, let's see here. Salary. Let me go by. Well, of course, Gordon's out. Mixon from Cincinnati still has a questionable tag, and so we'll look at with those things and on the strategy show, and build a couple lineups and put this all together, and then come back on Tuesday and see how we did tomorrow. Um, for now, I'll close this out. If you'd hit the subscribe button for me and the like button, I'd really appreciate it. If you have any comments, you can put them below. This is my 4th video, and hope this all this information provides you a little bit of value. Until the next time, take care.